Welcome to this lesson. We're looking at the themes in the Scarlet Letter and how these themes are reflected in our society today. This novel was written by Nathaniel Hawthorne. There are so many themes in this novel. Some include sin, guilt and shame, women and femininity, domination of patriarchy, revenge, isolation, conformity of religion, and justice and judgment. Hester Prynne is the protagonist of this novel and the subject of ignominy. In the first few chapters, we meet the members of this Puritan society and get a clear understanding of their expectations for women and men, as well as the severity of punishment to be inflicted on sinners. She's forced to wear the letter A on her chest to mark her shame as punishment for her crime. The story is set in Boston in the Massachusetts Bay Colony during the 17th century. There are four main characters here, including Hester Prynne, Roger Chillingworth, Reverend Dimmesdale, and Hester's daughter, Pearl. The major conflict. Well, Hester is imprisoned by the magistrates and is left in prison to think about her actions. She struggles to navigate her way throughout the journey to redemption and forgiveness. I've observed that the people of the Massachusetts Bay Colony are heavily influenced by their strong religious beliefs, and that the Bible is the manual to a good Christian life. They also believe that it is only through harsh punishment that sinners can change and discourage others from making the same mistakes. They practice ridiculing and shaming transgressors in public. Hester Prynne is forced to wear the letter A on her chest with no end in sight. What is ironic about this is that by doing so, they are not obeying a strong teaching of the Bible, which states that one should forgive transgressors. So, the main message. The society is quick to publicly humiliate people for their sins, but it is slow to take a look at itself. And here's a breakdown according to the students.
Okay, so we're reading the book, The Scarlet Letter, and we're going to tell y'all about chapter 1. Okay, so in this chapter, this story took place in Boston, Massachusetts in the 17th century. So Hawthorne explained to the readers what the prison looked like and its surroundings, and then he told us about the beautiful rose bush that grew right outside the prison doors.
Okay, the symbol in this chapter was the rose bush, which represented freedom and beauty because it's the last thing that the prisoners see before they go in and the first thing they see when they come out. And the character in this chapter was Anne Hutchinson, which went along with the symbol, the rose bush, because it was when she was going into the prison, that's the last thing that she saw. And the theme would be sin and shame along with the rest of the book. And read that.
Okay, so chapter 1 is compared to our society today because back then, like, a bunch of things were worse. Like, they judged people off of their religion and their beliefs, not like, they didn't take in consideration of anybody else's. It was just what they believed. And today, they kind of still do the same thing, but some people do take in consideration of others. So, that's about it.
Start reading.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about chapter 2 in the Scarlet Letter. Okay, so prison women waiting outside of the prison self-righteously and viciously discuss Hester Prynne and her sin. Hester, proud and beautiful, emerges from the prison. She wears an elaborately embroidered scarlet letter, standing for adultery on her breast, and she carries a 3-month-old infant in her arms. Hester is led through the unsympathetic crowd to the scaffolded of the pillory. Standing alone on the scaffold as punishment for her adulterous behavior, she remembers her past life in England and on the European continent. Suddenly, becoming aware of the stern faces looking up at her, Hester painfully realizes her present position of shame and punishment.
The themes in chapter 2 consist of justice, judgment, sin, and individuality. The characters in chapter 2 are Hester Prynne, Pearl, her daughter, and the Puritan woman. Okay, well, one of the symbols is the A on her chest stands for adultery. We can compare it to today's society because we also judge people, but we don't judge them based on religious sins as they did back then. But we still do judge people like that. We still publicly shame them as, like, it's not the same way it was back then as it is now, because, like, as now we would say cyberbully them or use the internet or social media to do that.
Thank you for your time.
Alright, our chapter is Scarlet Letter chapter 3, and it's called The Recognition. In this chapter, I gotta get this. In this chapter, it talks about how they bring Hester to the scaffold, which is like the big platform, and they're all shaming her, whatever. And she notices her real husband in the crowd. And in this chapter, the husband goes up to a man and he asks the man, like, why is this woman been up here? Because he just got to Boston. Because he said, like, the Indians trapped him or whatever. And he's in European and, like, he's in a combination of European and native clothing. And the man and then the stranger tells the husband, he says, that she's up there for committing adultery, and some man didn't come over to England or come to Boston with her. And yeah, I'm like,
Okay, tell us a little bit about the characters.
the main characters in this chapter are Hester, the husband, his name is Roger Chillingworth, and the stranger.
You don't know his name because he's a stranger.
Okay,
How about the symbols?
symbols in this chapter. A symbol in this chapter would be the Scarlet Letter on Hester's
Yes.
bosom.
Her bosom.
Bosom, as it states in the book.
Yes.
The symbol, it's like symboling adulterer.
Adultery.
She committed adultery. And
Now, there are a few themes. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
the themes, do you guys have themes?
I think the theme would be, didn't her husband threaten to find the man?
That's in the next chapter.
That's in the next chapter. I don't know the themes.
You know a theme.
Yeah.
Okay, take a second. Think it through.
Yeah.
Huh?
I mean,
Can't think of any.
isolation. Isolation because she isolates herself from everybody. This really doesn't.
I could say a theme of this chapter is knowledge, because the man or the husband, he asks the man, stranger, why Hester was up on the scaffold or whatever, and the man tells him the reason and all that why she was up there. So now he knows. So I guess the theme could be knowledge of this thing, of this chapter.
All right, that's an interesting perspective. Anything else?
Alright, let's talk about how this can portray into our society today. Well, I guess everybody's really public shamed in a way whenever you're around friends or whatever and they try to make you look bad or stuff like that. But, I mean, public shaming has really died down a lot from back then to today. So, they had her on a platform basically yelling and screaming and taunting, good word, at her about committing adultery. In today's society, you can't really do that because I'm pretty sure it's illegal in some kind of way to have somebody on a platform and publicly shame them for doing something. Now we have courts and all that where you're just kind of in a room and it all happens, but yeah.
And also another statement about the society. We're also hypocrites. Like back in the day, like they were sinners too, because everyone's sinners, and they want to publicly shame this lady for being a sinner. They're sinners too. Like they were hypocrites back then too.
Yeah, and we're hypocrites today. And I think that's all we're going to talk about today.
That's it.
Well, all right. Any final thoughts?
So y'all have a great day and
Stay blessed.
Stay blessed.
Stay blessed.
And be safe. So
All
See
right.
you next time.
Hi, we're talking about chapter 4. So the summary of our chapter is Hester Prynne comes face to face with her husband in the prison. He goes by the name Roger Chillingworth and he claims to be a physician. Chillingworth offers Hester a cup of medicine, but she believes that the medicine is poisonous. However, Roger wants to keep her alive so that he may find out who the father of her child is so that he can seek his revenge. You want to talk about who the characters are, Kimball?
I thought we were doing themes.
Okay, go.
Okay. The theme in this chapter is revenge because this Robert guy, he went into the jail cell and he was like, Roger guy, he went to the jail cell and he was like, who's the baby's father? Like, tell me now, I want revenge. So the theme of the thing is revenge, and Esther was like, no, like, don't do revenge, it's bad, blah blah blah. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. So don't do it. Some symbols.
So Hester believes that when Roger comes into the prison, he is known as the Black Man or the Devil, trying to poison her and come to get revenge on her and the father of her child. So that is her symbolism of him. And the characters are
Esther Prynne, obviously, her baby, and Roger.
yes, and the townspeople.
Oh yeah. But they're not
And
really in the
then
story.
how this reflects society is Roger Chillingworth says that he will detect signs from Hester in order to find out who the father of her child is. And this reflects our society today because he says that if she does not reveal his identity, then he will not seek revenge on the man right now. And basically, we use that method of blackmail today to get what we want in return because we won't do things most of the time unless we get something in return for it. So, that's it.
Yeah, that was.
Chapter 5 is called Hester at Her Needle. She is now released from prison, and then what?
And settles in a cottage surrounded by bushes, hidden away from the town. Hester soon realizes that she would need to take up work if she is to support her and her child. Hester is quite skilled at embroidery, and therefore she creates a home-based business where she would sew fine clothes and accessories for special events. Hester often showed her inclination for charity through sewing clothes for the unfortunate poor. When Hester entered the town, she faced ridicule and backlash, and also when she served her customers, she faced harsh scrutiny. The one silver lining to Hester's situation is her newfound perspective and ability to observe others' sin. She believes that this is a talent gifted from God.
The themes present in Chapter 5 include hypocrisy, sin, isolation, nature, and individuality. The nature in which Hester is treated by women, children, townspeople, magistrates, and others reflects on the hypocrisy of the Puritan lifestyle. They continue to ignore God's messages of forgiveness. Hester's sin continues to poison her life and gives her extreme grief. The weight of her sin is clearly affecting her. The place in which Hester chooses to reside, as well as her interactions with people, show that she is entirely isolated from her previous life. In addition, Hester is left to fend for herself and rediscover her personal identity. As well as the nature of group following, Hester often observes beauty in the natural world and parallels it with her own situation. The symbolism in Chapter 5 includes the cottage, the red letter, her child, and her needlework. Her cottage represents her isolation socially from the Puritan society. Her red letter continues to represent the burning guilt of sin. Her child is her only companion in the closet of her sin, therefore she is all she has. Her needlework is a passion of hers that comes to punishment, which represents her love with her partners. The characters in Chapter 5 include Hester Prynne, her daughter Pearl, and the townspeople. Hester feels free even though the townspeople continue to ridicule her throughout this chapter. She also feels lonely and isolated in her cottage. Pearl is her only companion throughout the time that she spends, and the townspeople are disgusted by Hester's actions and what she does.
Yeah. Okay. The chapter theme of isolation is present in past and modern society. While it is Hester's sin that isolates her, our modern society has never been more isolated due to technology. The lack of human interaction has led to rise in mental health issues and a sense of aloneness among the general population. As the story progresses, we see the effects of Hester's isolation take a toll on her mental state. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, class. Very well done. Thank you for this discussion. I have to say, shout out to Shelby and her note-taking skills. Take a look. Now here's some more footage.
Wait, I don't know what that is. Anyway.
Wait, no.
Okay, so in this chapter, this story took place in Boston, Massachusetts in the 17th century. All authorities. Wait, I can't say his name.
Hester is led through the unseen. Can you start over?
Until next time, thank you.